Hello, I'm Melonie at the Vancouver Yoga Center in Vancouver, Washington, USA. And I'm here again with one of our teachers, Bria, who is going to demonstrate and help us work with this tutorials that I have for Utkatasana-Chair Pose. So chair pose. Some of the things, the cueings that I hear, and some of the ways that people practice, again, I feel maybe not be serving the body as optimally as it could. So in chair pose, it's like you're sitting in a chair, but without a chair underneath you. And so here's a couple things I see people do. So they start out their chair bringing their feet and knees together, or maybe they were told again to get the big toe bases to touch and the heels slightly separated. And then they go into their chair. So go ahead and go into your chair, bend your knees, take your hips back, do your full chair. So you've got two legs pressing in towards each other. She also mentioned earlier how she felt like she couldn't widen her sit bones or your pelvic floor, and how we're going to know in a moment that widening the sit bones and pelvic floor is a really good thing in any form of kind of squatty type pose. So come back up. So you got the legs together, you got the feet together. Why I don't like this is because people have tendencies in their body, and one of the big tendencies I see a lot in people's bodies is that when they go into chair pose, there's one leg that's a bit weaker than the other, especially on the inner part of the thigh. Inner thighs relate to your core. Right? So the inner thigh, pelvic floor is core. So when we have the knees together, the weaker leg just kind of hangs out against the strong leg. But if we don't, let's take our feet hips, inner hips width apart, and do your chair pose again. Now we get to see tendencies. So almost everybody will have one leg that will fall inward a little bit more than the other. So when I have the legs, knees apart, I'm able as a teacher to see that and to cue that, to retract their knee. So now they can build some strength. When they were together, she wasn't able to build the strength. She was hanging out on this leg and not able to let this leg track the way it should be, using the muscles. You can come back up to do that tracking. When the feet are separated, the knees are separated a little bit too, we can actually work on separating the sit bones more. So let's face that way. So your pelvis has 4 points at its base. So you've got the sit bones on either side, you've got your pubic bone, and you've got your tailbone. And in this is your pelvic floor, pelvic diamond, or a kite. We want to broaden that kite the more we bend into a crease of the legs. So as she starts to take her chair pose, the more and more she takes it, or if this was a squat, the more and more squat that she does, we have to widen the sit bones more, and this seats the hips deeper in their socket, and then the tail back and the pubic bone forward. Now our pelvic floor is really strong to allow the forces that are coming down on it. But when she had her knees and feet together, she wasn't able to widen her sit bones and her pelvic floor. So that's a really big thing that I think could be a detriment to this pose by having the feet and knees together. And I know I'll probably get the backlash of yoga teachers out there saying, oh, but Patanjali said, and Iyengar said, and Bikram said, and I'll say, well, tell me some good reasons why to do it the other way, because I can say good reasons why not to. So I'll just leave it at that. So let's do chair pose one more time. The feet just a little bit separated. Again, I'm kind of going more in the line with the inner part of the ASIS, lines up with the center of the thigh, with the kneecaps, with this tibial tuberosity down the shin bone to the center notch of the ankle to the second and third toe. It's just a rough guideline. She does her pelvic apart, but you might find you're getting more of a sway back in your lower back. Start there. Be okay with that first. And then once you've got the pelvic broadened, if you feel a little pinchy back here, you take the front ribs back just a notch, just enough, and you're going to feel long and strong in that pose. Awesome. Come back up. So I'm a big fan of feet a little bit apart. I'm a big fan of it to show where your weaknesses are and then to work on those weaknesses. And I'm a big fan because it opens up the pelvic floor, and that's a huge part of our core. And then using that as a base to figure out what we do with the rest of the stuff above it. So that comes first. Now beginner students, show what a beginner student might do, even when their feet separated the way that I want them. And they go into the pose. And for most people, they're going to come into their chair like they're sitting slouched in the chair. The tailbone's tucked, the sit bones come together, and all of this sends more pressure out through the knees, which is not a super fun thing for the knees. So she doesn't like it very much at all. When she's doing the sit bones wide apart, it takes the hip creases back, takes the hips back, and it actually puts the vector points of pressure back and down through the heels. Rather than scooped under her tailbone, she's going to bend to putting the weight out through the knees and through the toes. So come back up, so tuck, not good. blossom better, right? We start there. We start with that base, and then we figure out what we need to do here so there's less pinching, compressing on the spine. So I hope that's helpful in chair pose, Utkatasana. I think there's probably more that we could talk about this pose and other ways of working it deeper and safer. But I think that will get you started. And it's just some tendencies I see that I think, again, aren't really serving our body. And try it this way for a while and see what you think. So if you enjoyed these tutorials, please click the subscribe button so I'll do more. And visit us at VancouverYogaCenter.com. We've got classes or online classes, and we will hope to see you soon. Be well.